Win and get help. Get out the rosary beads. Do whatever you have to do. Ravens jersey. What other? No, not a Ravens jersey. Bengals jersey. Texans jersey. Bills jersey. Steelers jersey. Terrible towel. You want it flushed down the toilet last week. You want it in your living room this week. Kevin Bowen back. Kevin's Corner. We've got Ross Lovers back with us. He was too emotional to be on the pod on Monday, but he has calmed down. Although when he heard the news earlier today, maybe that stress level has risen. But he's back. You guys love him. Ross, happy early New Year.
Happy early New Year, and happy early New Year to all you listeners out there, and hope you had a great holiday season. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. As always, you are great on the pod, and we appreciate your time. We've got a lot to get into. This is probably our busiest Wednesday pod of the year, to be honest with you. We're going to run down playoff scenarios. I did want to mention just kind of briefly the identity of who the 2020 Colts are. I feel like I get that question a lot, so I just want to go over that before Twitter questions as well. Obviously, three key. There is a football game on Sunday. I feel like we haven't given a whole lot of thought to that, although some might argue how competent the Jacksonville Jaguars are. So we'll give a prediction, but let's start with the news of the day, Ross. Anthony Castonzo done for the season. I have long been an advocate that he is the most important player on this football team. The listeners of this podcast certainly have heard that from me a lot. Look at the numbers. Honestly, if you don't even believe just my words, basically the Colts are like 4 points better with Castonzo in the line. I mean, think about that. One possession game, parity-driven NFL, a offensive lineman makes a 4-point difference.
Crazy.
Win-loss record, I mean, it would be the equivalent of like a 5 or 6 win difference over the course of a season when you look at what he's meant. So just crushing news when I heard that.
And what you and I were talking about a little bit before this is the injury just seemed like such a Colts injury. I didn't really get into the ins and outs of it. You know more, but Frank Reich mentioned it was an ankle and a half-speed drill in practice.
I don't know, man. It's, this is oh, gosh. It does sound like Andrew Luck type, kind of freakish stuff that happens. I mean, DeForest Buckner gets hurt at practice a few weeks ago, and that's a topic maybe we get into in the offseason. But let's start here on Castonzo. Again, there's no one more important because there's a trickle-down effect. And we saw it Sunday. When you don't have your tackles, first off, your quarterback is susceptible to being hit, which is obviously a big deal. Phillip Rivers sacked the most he's been sacked all year. And then secondly, your offense now all of a sudden has to commit another resource to protecting that tackle, the blind side. Now, again, Jacksonville, okay, they don't even have Josh Allen. So, it's probably not even that pressing of a deal. But when you're talking about this team in the month of January and real games, boy, I mean, it's just, okay, Nyheim Hines has got to stay in. Michael Pittman's got to chip. Trey Burton's got to chip. And now you're only sending 3 or 4 guys out on the route tree. And now all of a sudden, a passing offense that has struggled here at times, just creating separation, it's hindered because it doesn't have all of their available resources out there. So if I were running the show, I'd probably go Quentin Nelson. Now, the signing of Jared Veld here is intriguing to me, Ross, the more I think about it. When you think left tackle, it's not the most taxing position mentally. Like, it's not a center where you're dealing with constant communication and barking out calls and there's the mic, and you and the quarterback have to be on the same page for the most part. And look, there's still some communication aspect to left tackle. But compared to the other spots on the line, it's pretty much just mano-a-mano. Like, there's the D end, you block him, and if the nickel corner blitzes, who cares? You still block that D end. So from a mental standpoint, it shouldn't be too taxing on a guy like Veld here, who has started 113 games in his career, started for the Packers last year in the playoffs. You would think that wouldn't be, again, as big of an issue for a guy that hasn't been in your building all year long. Now, having said that, the dude hasn't played football this season, and he's 33, so there's certainly a physical aspect to playing that position as well. But I would go with Nelson. The handful of snaps that we saw against the Raiders, the Colts seem to be really pleased with how he looked there. To me, I think you have more adequate guard options in your building. Danny Pinter, maybe Jake Eldrenkamp, Joey Hunt is on the COVID list. He's the guy that actually filled in when Nelson moved over against the Raiders. So I tried to sneak that into Frank Reich earlier today, and unfortunately the call got over before I could ask that. But that's what I would do. I know a lot of people want Braden Smith over at left tackle. I don't think Braden Smith has ever taken a snap in college or the NFL on the left side of the line. I mean, think about how just different, just body movement-wise that is. You're so used to. Quentin Nelson's used to sliding to his left anyways, or, planting with that left foot, a little bit further back, I guess, in some pass sets than his right foot, and that would be the exact opposite if you asked him to go play right tackle. And obviously that's the issue for Braden. So,
regardless, crushing news.
Dude.
Crushing news for the Colts. Colts faithful.
Sucks. So wanted to cover that there at the start. And I know we won't have any Twitter questions on that. I've got an article that goes a little bit deeper. But again, you guys know full well what I think of Anthony Castonzo. I guess lastly, Ross, before we get into playoff scenarios, we should probably mention, what about Anthony Castonzo's future?
I was just going to ask, is this threatening his career, or what's the vibe on the longevity of this injury?
So Reich said not career ending. Now Reich had never really heard of this injury, but again, needs surgery, but not career ending. But you also got to think, look at Castonzo's season.
Yeah.
MCL, this ankle, and then ribs. I think it was ribs at one point earlier in the year. Yeah, I think he missed that Cleveland game with the rib injury. So, I mean, I can't recall any time in his career he's ever missed game due to 3 separate injuries. So,
at age 32.
I know, and that is a great point. And you guys know that, like, when I heard the Castonzo retirement news or possibility this time last year, ironically enough, I wasn't stunned because he's just not like football, eat it, drink it, sleep it, and I do that 365 days out of the year. But I mean, he still loves the game and is very committed to his work ethic and all that, but he's just not one of those guys. So what does this do? Does this hinder him in any way? Does this say, all right, enough is enough, I don't want to do this, like you said, at the age of 32? Again, it doesn't sound like it's some devastating back Achilles 32 concussion sort of thing, but still, it further adds to the importance of what we have said, and I said it on Monday's podcast. The biggest mistake Chris Ballard made this offseason was just an inadequate commitment to addressing backup tackle. And, I don't think the Colts are that injury-plagued necessarily at tackle. Castonzo, he'll have missed, 3 or 4 games this year. Braden Smith will have missed 1 game. Mark Lewinsky hasn't missed a game. Quentin Nelson hasn't missed a game. And Ryan Kelly has missed 1. So you're going to tell an NFL team at the start of the year, you'll miss 5 total games out of 80 possible. 16 games for your 5 starters. 5 out of 80? Where do I sign up?
Yeah.
So it's just
just happening at the wrong time.
Certainly. Couldn't. And let me think about it. Braden Smith against the Steelers. Castonzo against the Steelers. Castonzo against Myles Garrett, back in that Browns game. Certainly. It's definitely at the wrong time. But this is life for offensive linemen in this league. Mm-hmm. They get hurt, and they play a demanding physical position, and it's just such a head-scratcher to me that Chris Ballard, particularly at tackle, did not address that in a more serious manner.
Live and learn. Hopefully moving forward here, they're able to figure it out.
And last thing quickly, Ross, before we go to playoff scenarios, this does not change what I think of Sunday at all. The Colts, you or I or Rosie Bowe could be at left tackle, and we'd give her some help, and we would beat the Jaguars. I think I mean that in all seriousness. They are that bad of a football team.
That beat us earlier this year. All right, a lot of playoff scenarios. A lot of things need to happen on Sunday. There might be more eyeballs from Colts fans on other games and not the Colts-Jags. So let's walk through those really quickly.
Okay, well, first, Ross, are you doing the emotional feel-good parlay for the Colts?
I have to. I love it. We have a Twitter question about it here that we'll get into, but okay. I love that.
Okay,
I love that play.
We'll wait on that. I find it interesting that all of the teams the Colts need to win, they're all playing at home.
All playing at home.
Kind of intriguing. So that's your good news. Now, your bad news is the potential quarterbacks that you need to root for. Deshaun Watson is your first quarterback, who's the most important one, because that would be winning the division, potentially, if the Texans can beat the Titans. That speaks, for itself. Now, I don't think Laramie Tunsil is playing, which that is a big loss. Now, secondly, Matt Barkley or Josh Allen. As we record this early Wednesday afternoon, we still don't know that from the Bills. Sean McDermott is going pretty close to the vest with this.
The Bills rested players last year and then got bounced by the Texans first round. So do you think that plays into McDermott's thought process of
great research first by Ross Lovers? This man does not half-ass his effort when he comes on Kevin's corner. We all should just be super appreciative of that. You know, Ross, I sit here and I'm kind of surprised Pittsburgh's resting. Like, you've been the most inconsistent team over the last month. And you're resting with the 2 seed still. Like, does the 2 seed not matter? That's 2 home games. I know there's no fans, but logistically, locker room wise, I don't know. You can control your own music and play Renegade whenever you want to. I'm surprised that Pittsburgh and potentially Buffalo will be resting guys.
Who's all resting for Pittsburgh? I know Big Ben, which that makes sense just because of his age, and he kind of got beat up the last couple of weeks, but. Do they have other key players that? So
Tomlin hasn't said who, but I know Stephon Tuitt missed 2 days of practice last week. T.J. Watt got hurt, during that Colts game at one point, came back in. You got to think some of those. James Conner has kind of been in and out as well. So they haven't confirmed that, but so the 4 games, Colts need one of these 4 to happen. Texans beat the Titans. Bengals beat the Ravens. Steelers beat the Browns. Bills beat the Dolphins.
Correct.
So your quarterbacks, potentially, Deshaun Watson, Matt Barkley, Mason Rudolph, Brandon Allen. The last 3, I don't – Yeah, boy. God, good luck. I don't know. Rosie has a rosary bead that she prays, that she chews on. I don't know if you guys want to go out and buy one of those. But in all seriousness, I think one of these 4 will happen. If you're going to give me an NFL parlay in a given week – there's a good chance that 4-game parlay doesn't hit.
I think there's a better chance that that the Colts do make it in, but there is just that slight sliver, especially with those quarterbacks you just named. I don't know. I'll be rooting on the Texans. So best case scenario would be Texans beating the Titans.
Right. And that's a 4:25. The other 3 all at 1 o'clock. And one other thing is – this is an article form on the website. We'll not get into this on the podcast because Ross would be breaking into the vodka that is close by if so. The Colts could get in via some ties. Now, I hate ties. I think they're the softest thing in the world. It's it's like playing Rummy Cube with Maddie, and I win the first game, she wins the second, and I'm like, let's play a third.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, we both won one. Yeah, that means one of us needs to go to bed as a winner and the other as a loser. Let's go.
I know.
I play to win, but whatever. There are some ties that are actually in the Colts' favor, but again, that's an article form. Check that out, and as Ross mentioned, we will get to a podcast question, I believe, referring to the emotional feel-good parlay.
Correct. So I think most likely Bills beat the Dolphins, but best case scenario would be Texans taking down the Titans.
Yeah, I agree. Bengals, Ravens, no chance. Browns, Steelers, I don't know, man. Maybe this COVID thing with the Browns, who knows? But still, you're betting on Mason Rudolph revenge game on Myles Garrett.
Yeah, well, I mean, if the Browns team that showed up against the Jets last week shows up this week, then
that's a good point.
Or if the Browns team that showed up against the Ravens on that awesome Monday night game, we're going to be in trouble. Alrighty. All good there?
Yeah. Let's hit on this before we go to Twitter questions.
Talk about identity.
Yeah, again, I get this question a lot, and, potentially we are talking about a playoff team, here in 2020. Like, who are the Colts? And why are they so Jekyll and Hyde? And they're up and down this first half and that second half. And, I'm also a big believer in, when you're Jekyll and Hyde, when you're up and down, that kind of means you're an inconsistent football team. That kind of means you're in 8th place in the AFC right now. That's just life in the National Football League. But I do feel like there are some definite strengths of this football team. I would say pass protection, when healthy, of course, is probably the most consistent aspect offensively we've seen all year. Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni have echoed kind of what I said on Monday's podcast, and they've taken it to another level. Frank Reich just referred to Jonathan Taylor as beast mode on today's conference call and said that he feels like he's running as good as anybody in the NFL right now. I don't disagree with that, Ross. Taylor has 5 straight games of at least 74 rushing yards. That is very difficult to do in today's NFL. I need to double check, but I looked it up this morning. That's the longest mark in Colts franchise history in 15 years. Edgerrin in 2005. And it's the longest mark in the NFL this season.
That's crazy.
I mean, Derrick Henry's not doing that, 5 straight games. Dalvin Cook's not doing that. Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, whoever else you want to throw in there. So, I mean, and again, it's not just purely the numbers. It's how he's getting those numbers that make you miss stuff from Taylor. He's emerging right now, and you've got to ride him into this month. I'd say Phillip Rivers mentally is a big strength. That chess match aspect, I think, is an unquestioned strength. And then lastly, on the strength aspect, I think this team has stopped the run, again, at a very high level. That has been the best aspect to Matt Eberflus's defenses throughout his tenure here. And, Buckner put to the side. Even the previous 2 years, they stopped the run really well. And I think that's something that they do well.
I feel this going back to some of the high school football days, but, we always preached have a nose for the football. And make sure you get bodies to the football. I feel like this defense has a nose for the football. Even when, the ball's on the ground, they always seem to come up with it, and they're gang tackling and the energy around it. I love that about Eberflus's defense.
And I would probably throw that in there as well, Ross. I'm glad you mentioned that. That playmaking aspect, it's difficult to sustain that over 16 weeks. Obviously, it was missing on Sunday. And for the most part, it's been there. Now, lately, especially from the pass defense standpoint, it hasn't been there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they've had, in the last, 90 pass attempts, I think they've only defensed, broken up, whatever, 3 of them. Yep. And it's just, you can't have that. So those are the strengths. If I had to go with kind of weaknesses or questions, still playing from behind, how well can you do that? I mean, think back to the Jacksonville game, the first game of the year. Both those interceptions, or I should say the second interception came from playing behind score-wise. The first interception came from when you were behind the chains. So I just think in general, that is a question. The explosive nature to the air attack, it's been there at times, but again, just consistently, I think that hinders this team. And then lastly, and this has been the biggest issue over the past month and a half, it's rush and it's cover. This team cannot rush the quarterback at a high level right now, and their coverage has lacked as well. And that's been apparent here really ever since I'd say the Green Bay game. So, again, tons of people ask me, identity. For the most part, they protect the quarterback pretty well. You got an emerging running back. The defense stops the run. Your quarterback's super smart. But then your questions, identity-wise, it's, okay, can you win a game from behind? How well do you do this is such a pass-happy league. I wouldn't slot the Colts in pass offense better than pass defense, but I wouldn't put either of those facets of the game as elite or even strengths per se. So those are some questions.
Absolutely. All righty. Want to dive into some Twitter questions here?
Yes, sir.
Quite a bit. All right, we're going to start off with Andrew. Andrew mentions, hi, Kevin. Hope all is well. With the Steelers and maybe the Bills resting a majority of their starters, there's a chance the Colts don't get the help they need and get into the playoffs. Potentially finishing 11-5 and landing what is likely the 18th overall pick doesn't seem that bad. The team didn't have to be subpar to earn that pick. There aren't questions about capabilities and expectations for the future, and it's easier to move up to get a QB from the 18th spot. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, certainly that's a pro when you look at the long term. Now, and I've tried to mention this on past pods, there's always different segments of the fan base. Some segment is like, unless we win the Super Bowl, I don't care. Unless we get the AFC title game, I don't care. I'd rather go 3-13 and get a high draft pick. And there's others that are like, 2020 sucked. I want to cheer for as many wins as possible. And, it's kind of like, so many people have asked me about, do you really want to see Notre Dame in the playoff and then just get killed by Alabama?
Absolutely.
Yes. That means that they have had an unbelievable season and have a chance.
Yes.
You have a chance. I will wake up Friday morning and think to myself, holy shit, they have a chance. Now, text me at 7 p.m. or hell, hopefully it makes it till 7 p.m. Maybe by 4:45, maybe it'll be different. But it's just –
that's what being a fan is, though, is waking up on those days, on playoff games, having that feeling of hope. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One word, hope.
Yes. And in the NFL, I think more than any other professional sports league, crazy can happen in the playoffs. The one-and-done format, and just especially in the year 2020. But no, Andrew does make a great point. I mean, you would have the 18th overall pick. if the draft started today or was today, and I don't think that would change much if they make the playoffs because their record is so good compared to the other teams that won't make the playoffs. But yeah, certainly. I mean, 18th is a lot easier to move up or whatever than 23 or 24, something like that.
If Sunday is devastating, then Andrew found the silver lining there, that's for sure. All right, we're going to move on to Brian. Brian says, hey, Kevin, I believe our receiving core is not getting enough blame this season. The Steelers have explosive receivers that got open and forced PIs in the second half. When watching the second half, I noticed our receivers rarely got open and definitely did not force the DBs to even get grabby with them. Despite all the blame is put on the offensive line and Rivers. Thoughts?
Yeah, Brian, I do think it's a good point. And first off, I think Pittsburgh certainly has one of the deeper wideout groups in the entire NFL. I really like their depth at that wideout group. Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and James Washington and obviously Juju Smith-Schuster. I think a reason to this is Michael Pittman's been really quiet since Thanksgiving. There's been the 1 or 2 catches every game where he goes for 20 or something, but you're still waiting for him, to be 5 for 75 and a touchdown. Now Hilton has stepped up at times, but still, I just think you haven't had the continued sort of progression we saw from Pittman in late October, early November. So, yeah, I definitely think some blame should go here, Brian. And, you guys have heard me say this. Just because you've drafted Campbell round 2 in 2019, Pittman early round 2 in 2020, doesn't mean that you just don't look at a wideout come April. Like, you've got to look at that. You've got to look at re-signing Hilton. You've got to look at Smith-Schuster and Galladay and all the other wideouts that are free agents as well. It's a position group that still needs to get better and to upgrade there, short-term and long-term. So I think it's a good point, Brian. I think Frank Reich mentioned 2 of the 5 sacks were coverage sacks on Sunday, maybe 3 of them, but definitely 2 of them. So, I'm glad you brought that up, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Some of those pass interference calls, obviously biased, but I don't.
No. We don't talk about officiating on the podcast for longer than 30 seconds, or else my computer will blow up. But Ross brought it up, so we'll address it. The Colts got a bad whistle on Sunday. More plays than the Steelers did. Really, the only bad whistle I thought the Steelers got was on the Zach Pascal deep ball. T.J. Watt was getting held like none other. But honestly, the Colts had a lot more go with them.
Yeah, I think the worst call was the missed call on the offensive pass interference.
Rock Ya-Sin pick 6.
Rock Ya-Sin pick 6. All right.
No more ref talk the rest of the time.
Sorry. Moving forward, Michael/Wyatt asks, how much say does Phillip have in this offense? Does he have enough to just say screw Frank's call and at the line just run maybe the ball 3 times in the second half so that we don't lose?
Yeah, we got a lot of this, and I actually think it's a good question. First off, Frank Reich gives his quarterback an absurd amount of authority at the line of scrimmage, particularly Phillip Rivers. I mean, Phillip Rivers is the son that I don't think Frank Reich ever had. I think he has 3 daughters. So, yeah, I mean, first off, if you're going to play quarterback in Frank Reich's system, you will have a lot of authority, but especially if you're Phillip Rivers. And they mentioned after the game, we talked about this on Monday, that there were probably several run checks. I tweeted it out when the play happened. It was the first touchdown of the game. Was that Taylor? I think it was the first touchdown.
Yeah, it was Taylor.
That was a run check. It was a pass play from 3rd and 6 or 3rd and goal from the 6 or 5, and they run check it, and Taylor, boom, into the end zone. So, we can't lose sight of those as well. But this is a big thing for Frank Reich. It goes back to the draft last year, or the combine last year. I was there listening to Jordan Love from Utah State, and he was talking about just how little he does at the line of scrimmage. And that's such a big prerequisite for Frank Reich, protection-wise and check-wise as well. So I think Phillip really helps you out there. But again, Ross, rules are rules, but you've got to adjust those rules. And just because the box says this, there's times where you guys got to be like, you know what, mano-a-mano, I think this is the best chance we have to produce here. And we're not winning in this facet of the game, so maybe we got to do something else.
He does do a good job of checking to the run in certain scenarios that are like 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 5. You can tell it passes on, gets Taylor behind Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, and you just some of it, I guess, just becomes down to, you hear Frank and Nick Sirianni talk about Jonathan Taylor in these last 48 hours, and it wants me to bang my head more against this table and how Jonathan Taylor touched it 2 times as a ball carrier when you got up 24/7. Like, there is an element, again, of players, not plays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, in blitz, you're running to bomb no matter what. I don't care who your wideouts are. But, man, if I've got Randy Moss, I'm throwing it to Randy Moss a whole lot more than I'm throwing it to, Wayne Corbett or, I don't know, whoever else you want to throw out there. So,
yep, absolutely. All right, 1924 asks, longtime California listener.
Let's go.
Yeah, Cali boy. I may be being a homer here, but I think this loss to Pittsburgh will help Indy in the long run. Losing a game like this and having to fight into the playoffs will give this team an edge or swagger heading into the playoffs. Do you agree, or am I just being a homer?
1924, if I didn't know, I would think this could be Linda Reich sending in a question, It's just like, boy, this sounds like Lisa Lubbers or Colleen Bowen trying to give a little spin here when Ross or Kevin come home and things don't go well. It's interesting. First off, you got to get into the dance for this to even matter. And that's, I think, what it – like if Pittsburgh – Pittsburgh's tailspin late, okay, maybe you can spin that. They're still going to get in. Now they've won the division. Like, okay, maybe this has been the wake-up call that they needed. But, again, you've got to get there to try and prove what this point is. But still, man, I can't go fully there. I don't, laugh at this question totally because I do think there are times – I mean, look at the Colts Super Bowl run. Mm-hmm. They give up how many rushing yards to Jacksonville in December 2006? Jones-Drew and Greg Jones. I don't even know who all the running backs were, but they were running. We all read the Bob Kravitz line. The only thing that stopped them was the goalpost or was nothing. They had 250 some yards rushing against the Colts. Wake up call. Rob Morris inserted into the starting lineup. Bob Sanders gets back healthy. The rest is history. But the problem is the Colts have no margin for error. Yeah. And I would rather have a home playoff game. Like, if you would have won Sunday, you would be playing to win the division with just beating the freaking Jags. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And now you got a home playoff game instead maybe a trip to Orchard Park where that Buffalo team, man, if they play Kansas City tomorrow, Ross, boy.
1924, I think I appreciate the question. I really think it depends on what happens on Sunday, too. If the Colts sneak in by barely beating Jacksonville and let's say the Bills beat the Dolphins on a last-second field goal, but if you pummel the Jacksonville Jaguars like you should, the Texans take care of business against the Titans, all of a sudden you win the division. I could see that giving you a little bit of an edge or swagger.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a great thing. I mean, trust me, I think about that with Notre Dame all the time. I try to think of, getting your ass kicked by Clemson? Okay, that maybe could turn out well, but then I kind of look in the mirror and I probably change my tune.
All right, Humza?
That sounds good.
Kyle Humza. He says, hey, KB, really enjoy the pod.
Thank you.
In tight games, it seems like this team is constantly 50-50 on both sides of the ball. The defense either starts bad and then fixes it in the second half. He references Cleveland, Green Bay, first Titans game, first Texans game, or starts great and gets destroyed in the second half, Baltimore and Pittsburgh. The offense generally starts well and then fades. So clearly the offense game plans well throughout the week and then can't make adjustments, but the defense can seem to only game plan well during the week or make adjustments. Is he right, or is he just he asks, am I right in understanding this, or do I just not understand the game of football? Can you explain how the process of in-game adjustments works?
Well, I think in-game adjustments are constant. Certainly on the defensive side of the ball, that they are very series to series. Offensively, and I thought Frank was really candid with this on Monday, he scripts the first 15 to 20 plays. Really doesn't deviate too much from that. He scripts the first 15 to 20 plays of the third quarter as well. Now, he does that during the week. That gets adjusted slightly at halftime, depending on, score and what worked in the first half. And basically what Frank says is you're going to call your good stuff early. You obviously think that that's your best stuff. You want to get off to a lead. And he said the big challenge is how do you then use that in the second half, but use it in more of kind of an art form? Like, okay, we know that we have an advantage with T.Y. on this corner, but how do you maybe get him in the slot versus outside, or put him in a stack or bring him in motion, things like that. So, again, I kind of go back to what I said earlier. I think it's more of just water finding its level. But having said that, it is wild to me how there's been so many games this season where it's first half, offense great. Mm-hmm. Second half, offense suck.
Yeah.
First half, defense suck. Second half, defense great. Just that blanket of a statement.
Yeah.
There's been so many games like that this year, but I just think consistency over 60 minutes is difficult to achieve, but it's what separates, Kansas City and Buffalo versus Indianapolis and the Raiders, and then, a whole different level to the Jags and the Jets.
Sure. All right, Josh here. Josh asks, there was a lot of hot seat chatter before the season for Reich and Ballard if we didn't make the playoffs. I always thought that was silly, especially in a COVID year. But if the Colts go 11-5 and miss the playoffs, are we still going to have to hear about their jobs being in jeopardy?
I think what we said on the podcast, Josh, was the seat should be getting warmer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I was saying, this is a results-oriented business at the end of the day. I think we contributed a whole podcast to it. A big thing for me this season was what are you doing without Andrew Luck?
Yeah.
You entered this year, I think, 11-21 without Luck. Obviously, that record speaks for itself. Now 10-5 without him, that's a huge step up and is very necessary. So in no way do I think they will be or should be fired. Now, having said that, I will say this Sunday, and I will say this with a lot of confidence in this thought. A loss on Sunday would be one of the more embarrassing losses in franchise history. We can get into this more in 3 keys and prediction, but the Jaguars are terrible. They are much more injured than the Colts. They've lost 14 straight games. And you're a 14-point favorite, and that line will the Castonzo news might keep it a little bit more level. But as of right now, 14-point favorite, that's the biggest in over a decade for the Colts. So, again, not even saying what's at stake, but just purely 60-minute effort against another football team, it would be extremely embarrassing. But I don't think they are in jeopardy of losing their jobs, nor do I think they should be. But 2021 is huge. It's huge. You have to start producing. I think we had a few more of these questions that we can get into a little bit later. But Josh, it needed to be warmer this year. But it's like if you got one of those seat warmers in your car, which I never really had till I got a new car a few years ago. They kind of got 3 levels to the seat warmer. I think this year was just on that first level.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, it's teetering between two or 3.
Yeah. But if they get in, maybe win a playoff game, you turn the heater off.
The AC might be on if you make it to February.
Yeah,
shit,
for sure. All right, Matt. Matt asks, I do not have faith in Phillip with a 2-minute game-winning drive. I think he has been a major upgrade over Jacoby. Just don't trust him when the game's on the line. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's really fair, Matt. You cannot get into obvious passing situations. I mean, just think about that final drive, Ross, on Sunday. It was so dink and dunk.
It was. I mean, there was no rhythm, flow. It almost felt like everything was just lucky.
Yeah.
When we advanced the chains.
It was like you hope T.Y. Hilton makes that dude fall down again, or you hope Trey Burton can catch it maybe for 3 yards and then go out of bounds instead of catching it for 2 yards and going out of bounds, which his game management was interesting there, just realizing time and score where he was on the field. But I think that is the missing ingredient for me if you do make the playoffs. We talked about it in the Houston game where you came back and took the lead. You were tied, and you drove down the field. T.Y. had the big play down the middle, the offensive player of the year. But still, coming from behind with a big drive, late fourth quarter, that is something we haven't seen all year long from this football team.
Agreed. I think that's a good point, Matt. Jordan asks, how will you evaluate the season if the Colts go 11-5 and miss the playoffs?
So this is kind of similar to what Josh was saying, but I'm glad you phrased it this way, Jordan. An 11-5 season and you miss the playoffs, it will be disappointing. You have to take each season in its own entity. Like 11-5, most years, really good.
Yeah.
Really good. 11-5 for the Colts, what? Didn't they go 11-5 each of Luck's first 3 years? I'm pretty sure they did. But 11-5 in this wild 2020 season and missing the playoffs would have meant that nearly half of the AFC was better than you.
Yeah.
And that's how you have to look at it. Like, you are measured by each year in its own kind of individual atmosphere, if you will. And in this year, 7 other teams in the AFC will, under this scenario, will have been better than you. And that's a disappointment. Like, you don't trade the 13th overall pick for DeForest Buckner and give a 38-year-old quarterback $25 million to go sit on your couch in the month of January.
Yeah.
So 11-5, it's still it's a nice record, obviously. I mean, 6 games over 500. But when you're comparing it to the teams around you, you can't call it a success. It's disappointing. I think I mentioned this maybe on last week's podcast. Ross, the Colts favored in 15 of 16 games this year.
I was about to elaborate just a little bit, Jordan, on their strength of schedule.
Yeah.
You know, they 11-5 is great. You know, I think I'd sign up for that at the beginning of the year, but with the strength of schedule that they've had, and if they miss the playoffs on that, I think disappointing is the right word.
Yeah, I think it's the easiest strength of schedule in the AFC, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Kansas City is the only other team in the league to be favored as much as the Colts were this season.
Wow,
so,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's something that I was shocked by when I first saw it as well. Now, a lot of those are, just a couple point favorites, but still. So, yeah, Jordan, sorry. It is. It would be a disappointing season because you made some win-now moves. And there's an element of creating a winning culture, creating a culture that experiences January. You referenced Buffalo losing in the first round of the playoffs last year with a lead, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they had a lead.
You got to learn from that. It took Peyton Manning 6 years to win his first playoff game. It took Peyton Manning 9 years to get to a Super Bowl. Like this, I almost cussed. This stuff just doesn't happen falling out of bed.
Yeah.
So I think that's an element that would be disappointing as well.
Absolutely. Wyatt asks, why does Reich think all of his players are created equal? Why does he think Chaz Green is equal to Braden Smith? They're not, obviously, in all caps. Why not have a tight end help chip or something?
Wyatt, the Colts did give Chaz Green a little help. Now, there were times, obviously the strip sack by Watt was not one of those times that they helped him out there. I don't think he's treating everyone equal. I think there are times where he probably isn't as, willing to give help, or he is pretty bullish on his players. But I also sit here wide and think to myself, man, it's a tough balance. Yes, I think, and I tweeted this out, I know, before the final drive, I'm like, you've got to help Chaz Green, and you've got to help him every damn snap.
Yeah.
But again, the byproduct of that is, okay, now it's Hilton, Pittman, Pascal, and Hines only going out, and Jack Doyle staying in the block, or Jack Doyle goes out and Hines is staying in the block. Like, and that's what is such a tough balance, and why, again, offensive tackle depth should have been addressed in a more serious manner. Wyatt, you do make a decent point for sure, but it's also a really delicate balance at that spot.
Yep. Okay, David asks, do you think Colts fans would rather see Tom Brady or the Patriots win a Super Bowl?
Oh, man. David,
even when the Patriots are down and out, you're still bringing them back into our lives. Come on now.
Well, Ross, I'm gonna throw this at you. Would you rather see Tom hoist it or Belichick?
Yeah, I think Tom. Growing up in that Patriots Colts era was you had this deep hatred just for the Patriot logo.
Yeah,
I think now that Tom has moved on, I can almost appreciate the greatness as we're watching it. And if he were to win one in Tampa, I think it would definitely solidify him as the greatest of all time.
Boy, don't say that too loud. We got some Peyton fans on this listening to this podcast.
Yeah, 7 Super Bowl rings would just be unmatched. So I think probably see Tom win, especially because he's out of the AFC, he's in the NFC, and I don't know. Maybe it's because he won me a fantasy championship this year, but. I think I'm going with Tom Brady there.
Now the real truth comes out here from Ross Lubbers. All right, okay. We see where you lie. I would agree with you. I think the Patriots are the more hateable. I think Belichick / Patriots are more hateable. I think people are jealous of Tom. We're jealous because he's got a supermodel wife and he's good looking. He's won all these rings.
Yeah.
Now, selfishly, I llove Bruce Arians. I wouldn't mind seeing Bruce Arians. I don't know. Anybody a Joe Haig fan, former Colt? Probably not. But I think, David, I honestly think fans would rather have Brady win it. But there will be a section of the fan base, Ross, that will say, I love Peyton too much. I don't want Tom to have any more on his resume.
Yeah. I hear you. David, it was really, really sweet to see the Patriots just fall flat on their ass or on their face. Sorry, fans out there.
No, I love it. Let's go.
Flat on their face this year.
Let's go.
All right, Stanley. Stanley asks, "Well, that sucked. I don't have a ton of things to criticize Ballard about, and I will not overreact to one loss, but it does seem like he doesn't have a great eye for drafting defensive front four talent. Buckner and Houston, were both brought into our organization. So what are your thoughts on this? Thanks. And please never tweet it's in the bag when we were up 17 points. Thank you, Stanley. I've been harping on that forever.
Shut up, Ross.
That was the ultimate jinx.
Stanley, I'm going to say this because I just said shut up, Ross. But shut up you, Stanley. Thank you for all your questions and for listening to the podcast, by the way. Stanley's right, though. I would say, Chris has been an exceptional drafter in so many ways. But yeah, I mean, Terrell Basham and Kamoko Turi and Taekwon Lewis, those haven't worked out. Now, they found, when you look at that front five, front six, I guess Grover Stewart, you did draft. But really, everyone else is an acquisition of non-draft. Danico Autry would be another free agent as well. Al-Qadim Muhammad, a waiver claim from the Saints. So yeah, I would throw cornerback, Rock Ya-Sin and Quincy Wilson, being at the forefront of that, both early second-round picks. I guess Quincy more middle, but Rock definitely early. So yeah, I would throw those, wide out. Some people would probably throw in there with, I know Reese Fountain and Deion Kane were super late picks, but, obviously Campbell, more injury-related. But, maybe, I would say maybe more wide-out evaluation because the free agents haven't hit there. But obviously tons of positions where they found great success drafting-wise. But, no, I think it's a fair statement, Stanley.
I agree. All right, Louisiana guy, down south, down the bayou. Hey, Kevin, quick question for the pod. At what point are we going to throw some blame on Ballard for him ignoring the offensive line depth and QB position? Just seeing mobile QBs evade pressure makes me more and more frustrated that we haven't addressed our position. I feel like he gets a pass just based on the overall image of the roster and not those spots. Also, can you tell me what's going on with Frank Reich's play calling? It seems incompetent, inconsistent at times. Thanks, love the pod. So lots to unpack there. Let's start with him ignoring O-line depth and QB position.
Okay. We definitely have critiqued that. I would say O-line more than quarterback. The thing about quarterback was kind of like, what were you going to do this year? It was either stay at 13, in my opinion, and make an aggressive move to trade up, or you probably are going to find some Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. And that's what they decided to do. Band-Aid. I mean, let's just be glad they didn't run it back. At least it was they tried to do something to upgrade, and they have upgraded. I mean, quite unquestionably, it has been an upgrade. It's funny, Ross. I kind of compare the Phillip Rivers situation for 2021 similar to the Pacers had they brought Nate McMillan back.
Oh, interesting.
High floor, where the ceiling is, and I can reach the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just not high enough for my liking in professional sports. The Pacers, now, I don't necessarily agree with the Pacers running it back fully personnel-wise, but that's for a different podcast, and you guys have already heard me use that. But I just think that you needed to do something different for the Pacers and to try and create an advantage. And I think for the Colts, that needs to be done again in regards to the quarterback position, because it's such an important position. Furthering and speeding up that learning curve at that position is vital as well. And that's why I think a rookie quarterback, a first-round pick, whatever you want to call it, needs to be under center right away in 2021. So,
right.
And mobile-wise, I guess I should talk more about mobile because that's what he was kind of referencing. It's like, who are you going to get mobile-wise?
Yeah.
As a Band-Aid, it's just because the best thing that they did with Rivers was a one-year deal.
Yeah.
And for those of you that missed it, check out my Instagram or check out my Twitter. I asked Phillip that question today about, have you thought about Sunday could be it?
He was honest.
Brutally honest.
Yeah.
And super candid. So that's the best aspect of it, is you didn't tie your hands past 2021. But you guys know this full well. A mobile-ish quarterback ranks high on my attributes for that position moving forward.
Louisiana guy also did ask about Frank Reich's play calling. He says incompetent and inconsistent.
No.
Okay.
It's not that. We talked a lot about that on Monday.
Okay. James asks, hey, Kevin, I hope you and your family had a nice Christmas.
Same to you, James. We did.
Absolutely. It was a great Christmas. Is the role Kari Willis plays for us in coverage criminally underrated? If you rewatch the 3 touchdowns Pittsburgh scores after he went off, it's hard to not think that over-the-top coverage help from him could have prevented at least one of those scores.
James, question of the week. We did not talk about this enough on Monday, going back and rewatching things. That's on me, folks. Kari Willis got hurt on the punt when it was 24-7.
Mm-hmm.
And the next play, Rocky Scene gets beat.
Yep.
And we know what happens from there. Tavon Wilson, who replaced Kari, is known as a thumper. He got exposed. And, really secondary depth. We know full well that was such a big issue for Chris Ballard last offseason. And now with Kari, we'll see. As of us recording this, we don't know if Kari Willis and Michael Pittman have practiced yet this week, but they are both in concussion protocol. And obviously, if you miss a Wednesday practice, that's usually not great concussion-wise. But, yeah, Kari Willis does not give enough credit, and specifically against Pittsburgh. You are exactly right, James. His loss was felt. It was just the amount of big plays, too. And Kari does so much for them in red zone and handling kind of the disguise stuff as well. And TJ, I forget who I was asking. Oh, I was asking Julian Blackman last week when I filled in for Dan on our New to 3 show. So, yeah, you were spot on there, James. Thank you for that.
That's also the genius of Big Ben and the experience he has there is, recognizing the importance of Kari and exposing it very quickly.
I always think that, Ross. Like, I would have a coach in the press box that literally his job would be look for injuries of any note to that other team.
Yeah.
Like
a limp.
And yes, yeah. I'm not even talking about guys being taken out of the game. Yeah. Like Darius Leonard got banged up against the Texans, I think it was. And it was clear that he was hindered. Well, he's still on the field. Okay. Tight ends, running backs out of the back. Like whatever you need to do. I mean, that would be just a huge, huge part of it. And obviously I know coaches do that and there are obviously staffs that pay attention to that. But like you said, credit Pittsburgh staff, credit Big Ben for clearly exposing that. Because on the Smith-Schuster one, he pumped, Wilson bit, over the top. Boom.
All right, a few more here. Jason, a little bit of an angry one here. But Jason does say, hey, Kev, hope you enjoyed the holidays.
I'm glad he prefaced it. He led in with nice, and then he's going to come in for the kill.
He's a nice guy, just a little angry with what's going on right now.
Fair.
Is it finally time for the Colts fans to realize that coaching and roster management is holding this team back? From Eberflus's stupid bend, don't break defense that lets good QBs turn it on, to Reich's brutal play calling, and the coach's overall inability to keep these so-called high-character guys motivated. Yeah.
Man, you weren't kidding. Yeah, Jason, it's you guys know what I think of the defensive scheme, and I just think there's ways to maybe be a little bit more dictating on that side of the ball. I would argue, though, and I guess maybe you are referring to this with your roster management, I just don't think the personnel is good enough at the key spots, especially long-term. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking quarterback. I'm talking edge rusher. Long-term, again, hear me out here, left tackle, wide out, number one corner. Xavier Rhodes has played at a very, very high level this year for you, and he should be brought back, but he's also 30.
Yeah.
So I would say that. And I'll also reiterate, I do think the foundation is good. I think it's pretty stable. But certainly winning Community Tuesdays is different than winning a Super Bowl. So I do think that the personnel needs to continue to be upgraded, again, especially at those key spots there.
For sure.
And yeah, again, Reich's brutal play calling, that to me is a little bit too harsh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a motivation thing, Jason. When you go with this, I don't think that's at all. I think it's just part of how talented is this roster. I don't necessarily think that it's a top 5-ish, top 10. I don't know, maybe it is top 10, but at those spots mean so much more. It's why Houston had Kansas City down, whatever it was last year. We were talking about that
24-0
yesterday. Okay, they had Watson, Watt, and Hopkins, and Laramie Tunsil. It's your quarterback, it's your left tackle, it's your one wide out, and it's a bit of an edge rusher. I guess Watt plays a little bit more inside, but you get what I'm saying.
Yep. All right, 3 more here. Daniel asks, hi, Kevin. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Daniel.
Sunday's defeat was a tough pill to swallow. It's obvious offensive tackle depth and outside corner are top priorities for the offseason. Do we deserve our 10-5 record, or are we more of an 8-8 football team? I feel we were very lucky in 2 of the Texans' victories and could easily be telling a different story right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could look at it from that. Obviously, more of the rose-colored fan would say, well, you could be even better. You should have beat Jacksonville. You could have beat Pittsburgh, things like that. Jacksonville to me was not like that close of a – I mean, yeah, it was close, but like –
we never felt like we had a chance that game.
It didn't come down to like the final snap or like, anything crazy like that. I kind of look at the 2 Texans game, Packer game, and Steeler game as 4 games that were super close.
Yeah.
And you went 3-1 in those.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe go 2-2 in those. So that brings your record down to, 9-6, I guess you would be right now heading into the final week. I can't go full 8-8. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you did play the easiest schedule in the AFC. So, that is something to keep in mind as well. The old saying of you are what your record is.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I also think, again, there are some different 10-5 football teams and how they're feeling right now heading into week 17 and whatnot. But I would say probably just a hair under that. And, again, when you're 8th in the AFC, that probably is, to me, that's almost a better indicator of exactly who they are.
Totally. Ben asks, hey, Kevin, disappointed after the Steelers game. What needs to happen for our defense to be truly elite? Just an upgrade edge and corner, execution? Thanks and love the pod.
Sorry, I'm responding to a text for one of going on JMV later today. Okay, sorry. Can you give us him again, Ben?
Yeah, sorry. So he wants to know what needs to happen for our defense to be truly elite. Is it just upgrade our edge and our corner, or is it more of an execution aspect?
Yeah, definitely upgrade there. Again, I don't love the scheme, but this is it. This is what you've got. But yes, certainly edge pressure is honestly, to me, Ross, if you cured like edge rush, like it would probably mask anything else you might be worried about. Like if I'm going to nitpick, maybe a little bit of linebacker depth, maybe a little secondary depth. But again, that's super nitpicky. Edge rush, dude. It's it's flat out. It's exactly what you need to upgrade, and then corner for sure. But when you're playing the amount of zone that you do, it's not as pressing as like go out on an island for 60 snaps a game.
Yep. I feel like corner has just been a hot topic this week just because of the meltdown in the second half.
Yeah, that is a good point.
All right, last one. Nick asks, hey, Kevin, first-time question, long-time listener.
I love that, Nick.
Yeah. He loves the show.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of the ultimate Colts Heartbreak special parlay to at least have something if the worst Colts Heartbreak special, or if the worst happens. So the Colts Heartbreak special is Colts money line, Browns money line, Ravens money line, Dolphins money line, Titans money line. Thoughts? I think I'd take the Colts out of that.
How much is he saying? How much he's putting on there?
For $50.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know what the odds are though. I don't know.
No. So did you see the poll I had yesterday on Twitter?
I did not. No.
All right. Let me pull this up. So, I believe the odds are plus 460.
Okay.
On this parlay.
Is that including the Colts money line?
Yes. Okay. Now some people will say I'm not going to include the Colts because the odds aren't that great, which they're not. I mean, they're favored by 14 points.
Yeah.
And, those are the real people that are like, the Colts are going to lose. So we had 72% of the polling say that they would take their plus 469 odds.
Wow.
$50 bet to win $229. Now, that includes the Colts.
Yeah.
So you need the Colts, Titans, Browns, Ravens, and Dolphins to win. If you only care about financial stake, folks, let me make that abundantly clear. There you go.
Yep.
Are you doing it?
I think I'm going to do it because I look at it as if it loses, then I'm paying $50 to get the Colts into the playoffs. And I'll pay $50 to get the Colts in the playoffs any day.
There you go.
That's my outlook on it.
I think Jim Irsay would pay a lot more than $50 to get his team in the playoffs.
No kidding.
Can you imagine if they don't make
the playoffs? What if
Irsay
puts $100,000 on that?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't know if Mr. Goodell and the old people at Park Avenue would love that. Nick, I think you got to lay it down. Mm-hmm. $50, we don't need to go into people's bank accounts. But, if you've got means and you want to throw a little scratch on there, throw it on there. Yeah. Sounds like they aren't going to put the scores up in Lucas Oil. You can't tell me not everybody in that locker room
Yeah, I mean, again, talk about having a coach in the booth. You got to have someone relaying that information.
Sure, all of that, man.
And people will know.
You're gonna know.
There'll be fans chirping, saying things that you'll definitely.
It's like
know.
the Luck retirement. They're yelling down on the sidelines about that.
All right,
is that all of them?
That's all of them.
Thank you everybody for that. Before I get into 3 keys and prediction, just Happy New Year to everybody. I want to reiterate how much I appreciate you guys sending in thoughtful, off the wall at times questions every single week to the podcast. I know Chris and I really, really appreciate it. And I've got a lot saved that we'll get into, kind of the bigger picture stuff whenever the offseason does happen. And then a Beers with Bowen coming up next Thursday night, as long as the Colts make the playoffs. So that'll be January, I want to say it's the 8th maybe? 7th, January 7th at 8 p.m. So again, that'll be a Beers with Bowen. But really, really appreciate you guys for just caring about the podcast and making me think, because it really means a lot, and I think it improves the product of it.
Download it, subscribe to it, like it, comment on it, share it, do everything.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys. All right, 3 keys to the game on Sunday.
All right, man, let's start here. Colts favored right now by 14. I've got that as the 7th highest in franchise history. Biggest since 2009. It was at 15. It's now been brought down to 14. Ross, in team history, okay, the Colts have been favored by at least 12 points 21 times. They're 21-0.
Wow.
So am I jinxing anybody here? What am I doing here?
That's just a stat, right? That is just purely statistical, relaying statistical analysis. I'm okay with that. The jinxing only happens when you say, we can't lose this.
Shut up. In all seriousness, this is the most pressure-packed game of Frank Reich's career. I know 2018 season finale against Tennessee had the same thing on the line, but this opponent is much different, and now you're 3 years into the 10-year, and you're coming off a 7-9 season when you missed the playoffs. So, again, like I said earlier, a loss on Sunday would be incredibly embarrassing. And the Jags are beat up. It's Mike Glennon, folks. He's lost 11 of his 12 last. How is the dude still in the NFL?
Yeah.
This was my first thought. No James Robinson, it sounds like, potential rookie of the year. DJ Shark, questionable as well. We mentioned Josh Allen, CJ Henderson on IR. You can't lose to them at home. They're so beat up. You can't miss the playoffs 5 out of 6. You just can't. You can't. All right.
There's also the aspects. Sorry to interrupt. They're playing for the number 1 overall pick.
No. They have it.
Oh, they secured
clinched because the Jets won.
Oh, that's right.
Right, which some people think now they'll play free. Which again, I mean, like these players, they're playing for their lives.
Yeah.
Okay, first key, no hope. Like I said, 14 straight losses for the Jets. They are 3-20 since last November. And I think 14 of those 20 losses are by double digits. So when I say no hope, I mean no short fields, no turnovers and penalties that lead to some, easy points, no busted coverages. None of that stuff can happen. That's my first key. Key number 2, obviously protecting Phillip. Yep. When you have Anthony Castonzo status, it is clearly a huge, huge key. Something crazy. This kind of goes off number 1, but it's like something crazy needs to happen for the Jacksonville Jaguars to be in the game. A strip sack, pick up a fumble and return for a touchdown. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So protecting Phillip would be key number 2. And then lastly, I say free agency urgency, but I kind of, T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton is one of the greatest players in modern Colts era.
Yeah.
And Sunday could be it for him. Like, this is the reality when you have Week 17 in the NFL and you have uncertain playoff future. Phillip Rivers, this could be the final game of his career or in Indianapolis. Hilton, not the final game of his career, but potentially the final game as a Colt. I mean, Justin Houston, Xavier Rhodes, Danico Autry, Anthony Walker. I mean, there are some notable free agents that are coming up here in 2021. And it shouldn't take any of that motivation. It shouldn't take payback from week 1 to have you motivated for Sunday. But I just think tap into that. And again, players, not plays. And yes, you ride Jonathan Taylor, but I want to see T.Y. Hilton heavily involved because if I'm going down, you got to go down with one of the best players that is on this team right now at the skill group and certainly has been over the last decade.
I hope Phillip and T.Y. right before the game just acknowledge that. Say, this could be it for us. Let's just go ball. let's just have a day.
That sounds like a great NFL film scene. Just a nice little. Philip would probably go firm handshake. Ty might go a little bit more of something exotic. Philip might not be ready. It might look awkward, but at the end of the day, just get a W. Just win, baby, as Al Davis would say.
All right, let's wrap things up here about the prediction and what the outlook for the rest of the week looks like.
Colts 31-17. So I guess that's a push under the current Vegas situation, but I think that they will control this game. Like I said, Jacksonville is hurt and they suck.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hurt and you're bad, that's not good. And so I fully expect the Colts to win this game going away.
I agree.
Who you got?
I'm going to take the Colts. I was actually going to go 34-14.
Okay. So you like a little cover?
I like the cover, but for all of our gamblers out there, I love Colts first half. Colts first half, put it on the line. We're going to come out hot. We're going to come out with motivation. We're going to come out steaming, and I think the defense will shut Glennon down as they should. So I think Colts first half is a lock. I do like the Colts to cover, but if they do get up big, they might coast, so who knows.
And, folks, Ross Lubbers won you gobs of money a few weeks ago when he what was it, over on the Colts Raiders?
Yeah, Colts Raiders over.
I mean, you can thank him for that. Christmas presents. You can slide into his DMs.
That would have gone over if the over was 70. That was a high-scoring game.
That was. All right, everybody. Appreciate it all. I guess I don't know what the schedule will be next week. We'll just kind of leave it there, but after a win, we'll be here on Monday. I would say if they somehow don't make the playoffs, and maybe early Tuesday, if they have the kind of exit meetings on Monday, I like to usually get through all that, but I don't know. Let's not think about that. I say the Colts win, and I say they get in. I think they will get the help. I don't know where, I don't know how, but I think they will get in the playoffs and be playing next weekend.
Fingers crossed.
He's Ross Lubbers. I'm Kevin Bowen. Pray for my Irish on Friday. May Alabama be gentle with them, and may Notre Dame pull off the upset of all upsets, folks.
Hope.
Happy New Year, everybody. See ya.